favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes with Mr. Bunky opposed. You bet.
No, that'll be tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. The hard run, Derby.
Move on to 8B. Consideration of approving the renewal of legal services agreement with Terry Chiglow, attorney at law for general legal services. Chiglow proposes to renew the agreement for 17 months through the end of December 2015, to put the contract onto a calendar year basis and to increase the fee to the rate of $135 per hour, see attached.
Has anybody on the council thought about getting a different lawyer?
All the time. But I'll move that we approve this.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Bunky, second by Mr. Colvinson. Questions, comments, or otherwise? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Was that just way too simple? Way too simple to...
No. Comment on that?
Is there a reason I can't get every single agenda item to just go like this? Unbelievable. Thank you, Terry. Let's move on to 8C. Consideration of acting upon the recommendations from the Rushford EDA to follow their review of 3 businesses recently served a notice of right to cure loan default notice. See attached excerpts from EDA meeting minutes of 7/2/2014 and staff report. Welcome EDA President Tom Driscoll.
Thank you.
And we'll take these one at a time.
Did you see the agenda statements? Maybe not.
No, I did that. We discussed it.
The EDA has been revamping its terms of forbearance, but also been re-looking at the contracts that we currently have with loans that are outstanding, and come to the conclusion that there's several things that we need to make sure that we're getting done on a timely basis, and if not, we need to hold the loans accountable for being in default. With default status, there's an ability for a letter sent out, and the company is given time to cure the default. Failure to do that, it then comes to the council with some recommendations in terms. When it comes to G-Force, I don't think there's so much an issue that there's a default status. They're requesting forbearance, and we've had to delay a little bit their request because their request bumped in at the same time that we were redoing the terms of forbearance. I guess there is a technical default because, if you recall, they were starting to make payments in November of last year. They made a payment in December, and then I think they missed January, and then they made a payment in February. And then the conditions of the company, it was determined that they couldn't make those payments anymore. So in a way that we ran into what we were calling limbo, and in our discussions with the attorney, limbo is not a proper legal term, and so they were actually in default for lack of payment. One of the things that we're trying to accomplish with the new terms of forbearance is we're asking them for an exit plan. In other words, if you're asking for a year of forbearance, what is it about that year that's going to make a difference? We've asked them to provide milestones and a plan to show, so that as we're reviewing their financial documents throughout the period of forbearance, we can see that they're on track and that they're going to exit forbearance as their plan, indicated? Are they ahead of schedule? And if they're behind, what other tools can we provide to them? Additional assistance from CETA or Small Business Administration or others that might be able to help them manage their situation. And so with that, the subcommittee met and made recommendations to the full EDA, which is making recommendation to the council that you have in front of you. I don't know, Tom, if you just want to go through the recommendations.
Sure, if I could just back up, just a quick statement about this process. On the advice of the city attorney, we, in the EDA subcommittee, the staff members, and then the EDA whole committee, have decided to start using the D word, the default word. Failure to do so puts us in a situation of potential liability when it comes, if it ever comes to having to go to court to recover payments. We could find ourselves in a position of having waived certain stipulations in the contract. So that's why we're using that word. It carries a tremendous amount of weight, and we're not unaware of that. And G-Force has been in forbearance
40 months.
40 months, which is several iterations, three plus forbearance, 12-month forbearance agreements. We thought they were coming out last November. They had trouble, and part of our mission, and part of what we tried to negotiate with these loan recipients is just support. And so the limbo situation was really an effort to try to provide support. We met with them a number of times during that limbo. We sent letters. In fact, the council signed off on a letter last February that said, here's what you have to do now, reiterating the previous contracts, forbearance clauses that provide us with these quarterly financial statements, which G-Force has been pretty good about doing. But then here's what you have to do to ensure that you go into another forbearance. Because, and largely, I would say it's a couple of companies that G-Force falls into this, because they've been into forbearance so many times. We decided as an EDA to ask for a plan. How do you plan to exit forbearance? How do you plan to get to the point where you have X number of dollars per month to make that monthly payment? And that's what that plan is geared for. It's not geared toward their financial success. It's not geared toward shaking the trees for more investors or adding new product lines. It's geared toward you know, your monthly payment when you come out of forbearance is X. Show us how you get there. And again, G-Force did a pretty good job under the guidance of Tom Byrne, an accountant, to provide us that. So the options. After the EDA went through this, the subcommittee and then the whole committee, the one thing we had to reconcile was that limbo. They proposed an 18-month forbearance to sort of be retroactive and go back and pretend as if that forbearance, that default hadn't existed. We decided sort of on our own, and we'll see what Mr. Chigwell has to say, that we were proposing that the council acknowledge that default and that we basically forgive it and allow them to enter into forbearance beginning last May to continue for 1 year till next May, and that their plan to exit forbearance reflects milestones of sort of product volume sales that reflects how they're going to generate the revenue they need to start making payments at that time. If they do not, and we have a couple of very strong financial people on the EDA, in the form of Brad Hoynes and Janelle Appel, and
Ansel.
Apple.
Ansel.
Ansel, sorry. And she and Brad are very helpful when it comes to looking at these financial statements and reconciling how the statement agrees with the product sales and volume numbers. So at any rate, we're asking, based on their plan to exit forbearance, that you acknowledge default for a period from November to May, and then extend renew forbearance for the period of 1 year until May 2015, when loan payments would resume. The second option is the forensic accountant, and maybe Steve could say a little bit about what we've done there.
We're looking for resources in order to go into, not all situations, but some of these companies, especially the ones that have been in forbearance for quite a period of time. These companies have changed dramatically since the days that the first loans were given. And we're concerned about our security position. We go in there, we look, we think that we've got it all covered, but you know, in this case, it's the main security piece is code. And you know, how do you quantify the code? How are we sure that the code that we have the security on is still the code that's viable today and what they're using in their LLC, especially because they're building new LLCs branching off the main one. And so at some point, we're asking for the council, if it becomes necessary, that the council would authorize us to engage a forensic accounting firm to go through and do an audit of the business and take a look at the security, make sure that it's still there, make sure it's still valid, and if not, offer suggestions as to how we could fix the situation and make sure that we're collateralized properly for the loan. Because there's no one in this area that's smart enough to figure that out.
Would that be up to the city to hire an audit?
And then it would be put on the back of their loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would end up paying for it. We'd have to front the cost.
Well, with G-Force, I got a question here. They bought the Tri-County building?
Yes,
The building,
Contract.
right?
contract for deed.
So, how are they making payments on that?
They are making money.
That isn't really what I asked.
Well,
What I asked is why we were in front on the loan, right? Before they ever thought about buying Tri-County.
That's correct.
Why is it that Tri-County's getting the money and we are not?
Well, let me answer this way, because that is a very good question, and, you know, I'm not sure that I have a ready answer. We've asked those kind of questions. That's why we want the forensic accountant. You see this chart on the back. When we started this loan, this was the company we were dealing with. What we're dealing with now is this wheel of spokes, and spin-offs and companies, and frankly, without an audit, I think it's hard to answer your question. However, without extended forbearance, we're stuck in limbo with these guys. When they agreed to this forbearance, they agreed to this audit, and they agreed to pay for it. And we have had a conference call, at least one that I was in on, with, you know, some very talented programmatic type auditors who look, you know, we ask the question and they come up with the answer. So that, you know, that's my answer. I'm not sure that we can say that Tri-County is completely satisfied with their payments, nor should I suggest that they're not. We really don't know that, and we just need, I mean, we have heard things, and we always hear things, but without without somebody getting in there and actually looking and answering our questions, it's a lot of hearsay.
I don't think we should say anything about their lease other than it's current. I would suggest that if they paid us instead of Tri-County, they wouldn't be in Rushford. Because they have to pay the rent to keep the roof over their head. So if they were instead sending the money to us, they wouldn't be here because they wouldn't have enough money to pay the lease and the utilities.
So that doesn't, two wrongs don't make a right.
No, but what you're doing is you would put them out of business, in which case we wouldn't be able to satisfy the loan.
But we've given them now 4 years. How many years is it?
40 months.
40 months.
4 years?
That's why they asked for 18 months, and we're only giving them 12.
So if you just wanna take what we get, then just have to tell Mr. Chiglo to make a motion and tell Mr. Chiglo to collect the loan.
Right, there is a third option here, which is collect.
But I think what we're saying is that their plan to get out of forbearance looks like it's the best that we've seen so far from them. Part of it is because no one's ever asked them to provide that kind of information. And it's taken us a while to get to this point, and now we have this process in place. We can do a better job of monitoring how they're performing.
Well, that's about the only alternative we got.
Is the default gonna be written into any language that they will have to sign or agree to?
Joyce can answer that. I think it'll be in terms of their forbearance, correct? It'll be in their terms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me just back up quick and Mr. Chiglo jump in. We sent out cure letters. This is all predicated on a 1-month cure. We, in the cure letter, without coming to the council, we said, we've been advised that you are in default. You have 30, and there is a cure in the language of the contract and in the language of finance. And here's your cure. Provide us with this plan to exit forbearance.
Pay us the
Or
number.
pay us off. And there was probably more to it than that even. In response to that, and you have 30 days. They were prompt, didn't paint us into a corner. Within a couple of weeks, we had a response which we again modified. We didn't accept the 18-month proposal. We stipulated that we're not gonna call that period of default forbearance in a retroactive fashion. So I'm not sure what sort of legal stilt we're standing on here, but our counter proposal is to declare that 6-month period a period of default, and we are now curing it
Through forbearance.
through forbearance.
Right.
So there, somewhere, if somebody in the future wants to look, hire an auditor and look at their financial startup period, the ups and downs and the, creditworthiness and all that D word will be in there somewhere, in the documents. But it's also that it has been cured. I mean, I don't think this is the most unique situation, especially for a high-tech startup, which we took on as a city. But I don't think anyone here around the table was involved in that, but we took on as a city many years ago.
How many people do they employ?
Is it written here? This is just shifting ground. I never quite know how to, they're not here to answer.
Part of their upcoming financials will indicate their payroll.
Well, and we also, they have increased, that for a fact I know.
We met the 2 people that moved here.
Right.
They're living above the newspaper office.
And they're staffing these, they have labor